All right, legends. So I got absolutely fuck all done today, but I wanted to film this video. This one's going to be good. This is going to be fun. This is important. Okay, we are talking about freedom. Freedom, right? Not in the big, like, wishy-washy sense. I'm going to give you an actual plan of one thing that, in my experience, you need to do if you want to genuinely be free and actually feel free. Okay? The goal here, never have to follow somebody else's rules. Never have to follow somebody else's orders or instructions, right? And achieve complete and continuous, not a blip, continuous location, time, and financial freedom. Okay, I want to start things off with a clip from an awesome movie. I'm going to cut over to that. It's going to set the scene for everything that I want to talk about today. Then we're going to dive into the good stuff. Let's do it.
You get up $2.5 million. Any asshole in the world knows what to do. You get a house with a 25-year roof, an indestructible Jap economy shitbox. You put the rest into the system at 3 to 5% to pay your taxes, and that's your base. Get me? That's your fortress of fucking solitude. And that puts you for the rest of your life at a level of fuck you. Somebody wants you to do something? Fuck you. Boss pisses you off? Fuck you. Own your house. Have a couple bucks in the bank. Don't drink. That's all I have to say to anybody at any social level. Did your grandfather take risks?
Yes.
I guarantee he did it from a position of fuck you. A wise man's life is based around fuck you. The United States of America is based on fuck you. You're a king. You have an army, greatest navy in the history of the world. Fuck you, blow me.
All right, so that clip that you just watched is from a movie called The Gambler, and it brilliantly sums up in 3 minutes what I'm all about, right? Which is building a position of fuck you. Okay, I want to talk to you about some advice that's spread online that is not helpful when it comes to doing this. And in particular, then I want to go into actually helping you build a plan in order to build your position of fuck you. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, little disclaimer. Before we do, none of this is financial advice. You need to go and make all of your own decisions. Get professional accounting, tax, legal advice before you do anything, and never invest in anything that you do not understand. I'm simply telling you some of the stuff that I've done from my own experience, and then you can take it and do whatever you want with it, but it's information, it's entertainment, all that kind of shit, okay? Not financial advice. Could not be clearer. Let's rock and roll. All right, so here's some common advice pops up in the online game. All right, go all in, reinvest in your business, take risks, and leverage up to build wealth. Okay, I want to break these down one by one. All of them are great advice, and in some cases, unless correctly understood, can be fucking dangerous advice. Okay, the problem with go all in is that it lacks any context, okay? So if you've got a personal brand business, right, and you're not building something that you can ultimately sell, you're not building like a true exitable asset, a business that you can flip for a multiple of earnings, you need to be taking money off the table along the way and building this foundation, this fortress of solitude, right? This base that is your position of fuck you. Okay, so the problem with going all in, it's great from a mindset perspective, but this combined with this constantly reinvest with your business can leave you aggressively exposed, because if you pump everything back in and it doesn't work out, you're back to square one. If you pump everything back in, you're always going to be in a position of scarcity from like a personal finance perspective, because you're never going to be accumulating this foundation. Okay. Same with taking risks. Taking risks are important. Risks are the only way that we're going to get a return, right? But you don't want to take stupid risks. You want to take risks that, you know, are a very likely payoff, or there's a huge upside with a tiny downside. Right? We want to take strategic risks. We don't want to do dumb shit. We don't want to take risks that are going to compromise this baseline that we're trying to build. Okay, and then leverage up to build wealth, aka get debt. Again, debt can be helpful, right? But I think there's an unhealthy obsession with it, and it can be very, very contradictory when it comes to trying to be free, because your debt is an obligation to somebody else. You are beholden to somebody else. And I can tell there's somebody watching this right now who's just like, but just use debt to buy assets and let other people pay for it. It's not always that fucking simple. Markets swing, right? Markets can swing in a big way. Most people who talk like that have never been exposed to how much debt can fuck up people's lives. And I don't know how much you know about my backstory, but for the first 6-7 years of my career, I dealt with distressed individuals and distressed companies and helping them turn things around. It can seriously mess up your life in terms of being able to service the debt, right? In terms of asset values relative to the value of the debt, things can change pretty quickly. Okay. So my issues with some of these advice relative to actually trying to create freedom is that, you're creating like a real concentration risk. If you go all in and you go all in on one thing, particularly something that you can't sell, you're putting all of your eggs in one basket, which sounds good. It sounds good in theory. And I'm not saying don't focus on building one thing, but you've got to take money off the table along the way to build that foundation. Okay. There's no downside protection in this case, right? And as I said, a lot of this lacks context, and then ultimately debt, it owns you. My big problem with the conversation around debt is most people just talk about it from a pure quantitative perspective. And I don't want to turn this into a video about debt, but it's relevant to this conversation. Most people only talk about it from a purely quantitative perspective, aka interest rates, leverage ratios, loan terms, equity, serviceability, all these, math elements. The conversation that needs to happen more is the qualitative, the other aspects of debt, the stress, the anxiety, the impacts on your mindset, the weight that it puts on your shoulders, and then ultimately how it changes how you behave, right? The person that's up to their eyeballs in debt takes on a client because they have to. The person that isn't says no because they're truly free and they don't need to. Okay, now again, I'm not saying debt is always bad, but I'm saying be careful with it. Okay, be careful with it. All right, so here's the one thing, right? Sexy title, do this one thing in order to become truly, truly free. And it ties perfectly into that video at the start. On your way up, as you're building the business, as you're following the advice that I give you on this channel, and as you follow along on socials and you go and implement this shit and make money, I want you to start building little fuck you funds along the way. Okay? The people that don't like bad language aren't going to like this video, but it gets the point across. Okay? So what are many fuck you funds that we're going to build on the way up? These are little pockets of cash, little pockets of investments, cash equivalents that we can build passively and silently, and they grow in a couple of ways. One, they grow because we deposit into them regularly. Two, they grow because of market exposure, right? Fluctuations in the market. And yes, that'll mean that they'll dip as well. And three, they'll grow with time. Okay, we're going to give you some examples, right? Ideally, these are things that are never touched or going well, and you can pass them on to your son, your daughter, whatever, right? But they could fuel you for years if necessary. If the market turns, if something drastic happens and you need a backup plan, you've got these things ready to rock and roll that you can liquidate, that you can turn into cash, that you can use to survive, that you can use to look after your family, that you can use to take a step back, wind your expenses back, regroup, rebuild, and then go again. You're not getting wiped out completely and then having to, overhaul your entire life or go bankrupt or whatever. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about building these little fuck you funds along the way. I was talking about this concept on my Instagram stories and Facebook stories the other day, and folks seemed really interested in it. Okay. So here's a couple of examples, right? You've got automated deposits into like whole markets or large ETFs, right? There's an app here in Australia called Spaceship. It's just like one of these little mini funds that I build up. Takes a bit of money out each week, and just clocks up over time. Then as the market goes up, it increases, right? You don't even have to look at it. And then all of a sudden there's 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 grand accumulated in one of these things over the space of, years, depends on your income, right? But accumulates. And then that's an amazing little nest egg that if necessary, you can tap into, pay the mortgage on your home, pay your rent, right? Be able to get out of a sticky situation if you've created one from taking risk. That's that's really easy to build up passively and silently. It just happens, week after week after week after week. And if the market grows, you get the benefit of that. But you also have to ride the downs. Another one that I'm a big fan of, and I think this is a really underrated investment vehicle, is debt funds, right? So what is a debt fund or a debt vehicle? This is where you essentially become the bank, right? So most people owe money to banks. I prefer to be the bank, right? So these are funds that either through an individual asset or through a broader fund that is across multiple assets, people are borrowing money in order to do whatever, usually shorter term financing if you want good returns. And then they'll put up security, or I've said here they're secured like real estate in order to get the loan, and we receive the interest. Okay. And the reason I like these is because there's typically monthly or quarterly rollovers of your cash, and you get paid out monthly or quarterly. And so there's real cash flow that's spinning off the money that you put into these things. Okay. And with interest rates going up, particularly here in Australia, you can now get, 8, 9, 10+% on these things, like real cash flow paid monthly, paid quarterly, and it's asset backed, right? Yeah, there's a little bit of timing delay. So if you needed that cash right now, you'd have to wait until the end of the quarter, but it's not a huge amount of time, right? So it's pretty accessible with a bit of a delay, right? But in return, you get really good payouts. So that's another one that I like. It's especially because it's secured. It's asset backed. So the downside is pretty capped, but it's spitting out cash, which is the other reason that I like it. And then another example, which I was talking to a gent about on Instagram, is owning a piece of free and clear real estate without mortgage, right? This is like the ultimate fuck you fund, because if you, like he says in the video, right? If you own a piece of real estate free and clear, there's no debts on it, right? As long as you can service any costs related to owning it, be that taxes or maintenance or whatever, that's your, that's your fortress. That's your place that you can, whether you live there or not, you might rent it out, but because you want to live somewhere else, right? Like I own other real estate, but I live here. I rent here because I want to live in this, awesome apartment. And this costs me a hell of a lot less to rent than it would to own, right? I pay about a quarter of what it would cost me if I bought it with a mortgage, with all the costs to own it. Topic for another day, but it's pretty crazy. So you can own this, rent it out, make money off it, as in own a piece of real estate without a mortgage, rent it out, make money off it. But then if, everything turns to shit, you've got a place that you own that doesn't cost you money month after month, and you've got that place that you can retreat to and, like I said, rebuild. Okay, now obviously that one is going to take a bigger position to get into and to pay down to zero. That's going to take more income, but that's what this channel is about, right? It's about helping you guys increase your income. Okay, these two you can get started for way less. Like I've got money in one fund here that I think minimum's like $5,000, and then I'm in another one I think the minimum's like $1,000. These are plentiful, right? You can get in for $100, and so you can start accumulating it. Okay, so the trick here is that you got to balance it. You can't pull all of the cash out of the business such that you're starving it, but you do want to be taking money off the table along the way so that you're building that baseline, so that at the end of the year you go, right, I'm a hell of a lot better off than I was at the start of the year in terms of my, in terms of my vault, my kind of financial protection, because I've built up this baseline, right? And so the reason I like to build up different ones is obviously, we diversify our risk across different places, but also I like to, have exposure to different things. Like these deposits, these don't pay out cash flow. But if the stock market swings up aggressively, I get the benefit of that. These are less risky, less volatile, downsides protected because they're secured and they spit off cash flow. So I just like exposure to different things. The other thing too is when you've got and there's more, but that's just a couple of examples. The other thing is that when they're kind of spread out and just like a little amount goes in each month, you really don't like notice it. It's very different from like pulling out 50 grand and transferring it into something in one big hit. You really, you really notice that. So I would recommend you build up these different pockets as your income's growing, as a hedge and as a downside protection against a bad situation happening, right? And I know people on social media don't like to talk about bad things happening, but they do happen, right? Take it from someone that was exposed to it week after week, year after year, early in my 20s. From mums and dads all the way up to multi-billion-dollar companies collapsing. Bad shit happens. And usually there's a ton of debt involved, right? And things swing and it's like, fuck, now we're left holding the bag. Okay? Again, I'm not saying debt's bad, but you need to think about it. You need to be careful. Okay, so rolling this up, some considerations, right? Go all in, but build your nest egg along the way. Go all in from a productivity perspective. Go all in from a mindset perspective. Go all in terms of like, this is the one direction that I am moving in. This is the one offer I'm selling. This is the one thing that I'm building, right? Your personal brand or your main offer or whatever. Go all in mentally, but as part of that, take some chips off the table as you move along, because that's going to build your downside protection. That's actually going to allow you to make more money than if you pump every single dollar back in, because you will feel safer. You will have more ability to say no to stuff that isn't necessarily serving you right now. To that client that wants to pay you, but you know is going to be an absolute shit show. You say no to them, a spot stays open in your roster, and then a dream client comes along. You make the same money up front, or maybe they pay you a bit more, right? But they get amazing results. They refer, they ascend, they stick around, your retention goes up, and good things happen. But if you couldn't take them on because you said yes to this other nightmare client who's now taking up all of your time because you needed to, because you didn't have a foundation built, we miss out on those opportunities. Okay, so go all in, but build your nest egg along the way. Right, 2, diversify fuck you funds across markets and focus on liquidity, right? That's except for this one. This one's different. This is really just about having a place that you can ultimately retreat to. Obviously, this isn't super liquid because you have to go and sell the house. But focus on, things that are pretty liquid so that you can access them. I prefer the ones with monthly rollovers here because it means I get access to it sooner, but the ones that in quarterly, I'm not going to need that money. I've got other ones that are more short term that are fine. So think about liquidity, think about diversifying. You might want a bit of equity exposure, a bit of debt exposure, different things, right? Just spread it out and then let it build passively, regularly, and just ignore it. Let it just accumulate and do its thing and just live your day knowing that you've got it there if you need it. If you want to blow up the business and you need 6 months of runway, it's there. You can go rebuild, you can reconnect, you can realign and go do what you really, really want to do, right? If you have a bad month because all the leads that come in are just a nightmare and you don't want to take those people on and you have to dip into one of them a little bit, so be it. You'll be able to go and rebuild it, right? It's good for your sanity to not to have to take on a ton of clients that you don't want to work with, okay? And then the holy grail of this, work towards owning one piece of real estate free and clear that you can always retreat to if the shit hits the fan, and then rebuild, okay? This is going to be a bigger goal, but I think it's a great one to work towards, okay? Here's something that I know is going to be an objection that comes up. You might slow your absolute growth. So overall revenue, overall net worth, all these kind of things might go a bit slower because you're taking money out of the business, you're taking money out of the main venture, but you're building something that covers your ass along the way when bad stuff happens, okay? And it happens, all right? So you might limit the absolute number a little bit, but you've got protection along the way, which, trust me, is going to allow you to enjoy the day-to-day so much more, because your need for shit to work, your need for something to happen, your need for a client to sign on is going to wash away more and more that you build up these different pockets, Okay. And this becomes even more important when you have a family, right? Like 7 months ago, I didn't have to think about, I just had to think about myself and Liana, but now I've got a son, right? So my decision-making changes. The risk tolerance changes. Your risk appetite changes, right? So it becomes more important as you get older, as you get married, as you have 1 kid, 2 kids, multiple kids. You might, I've financially helped out other family members along the way. As you start to become more of a leader and as you start to make more money, people are going to need your help. And that's one of the perks of making more money, the perks and the responsibilities, and it can be stress. But building these nest eggs will really, really help you. And it will ultimately unlock freedom because you aren't beholden to anybody. You can say no to prospects. You can say no to business opportunities that you don't want to do. You can fire clients. You can kill off products and rebuild the thing that you really want to build. You can change niches, right? You can have the freedom to do all these things, to take time off, right? To be more creative, all this kind of stuff because you've got the downside protection. Okay, so with all that said, you can probably see how it ties into the original video. All right, as you're on the way up, protect the downside. That's what's going to give you true freedom. Build up these little funds and just know that they're there if you need them. And then that has huge second, third, fourth order consequences in terms of being present and being truly free, like we've discussed along the way in this video. Okay. To the folks who are like absolutely fresh and they're like, all right, well, I'm trying to grow my business and this doesn't really apply, go watch the other content that will help you increase your income. And then as things are rocking and rolling, pay attention to this stuff and do it right from day one, and you'll be flying. I appreciate you hanging out with me in this one. I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day. Cheers.